welcome back to another video on Marvelous Gaming. During the latest State of Play, the studio unveiled Control Resonant, a massive standalone expansion that connects Control and the upcoming Control 2, with a new playable character, experimental audio-based mechanics, and gameplay that is completely different from the base game. This is one of the most interesting DLCs ever released for a game, so here are 12 major confirmed things about Control Resonant. What Control Resonant is. Control Resonant is defined by Remedy Entertainment as a direct standalone sequel to the 2019 blockbuster Control, although it expands upon the world of Control, established in the first game, and which is an expansion of the Remedyverse, which includes the canons of Alan Wake and Max Payne. The developers insisted that the game is designed to be played without any prior knowledge of the lore, which I find to be a rather strange comment, as Control is a great game, with a straightforward yet deep world building and narrative. They describe the DLC to be a sibling of the original rather than a continuation, which is strange considering Resonant is set 7 years after the events of the first game, where players leave behind Jessie Feden to control her brother, Dylan Feden, who has awakened from his coma to face a hiss outbreak that has spilled out of the oldest house and onto the warped streets of Manhattan. Release date, platforms, and publisher. The game is officially confirmed for a 2026 release, though Remedy Entertainment has not yet provided a specific day or month for the launch. In terms of availability, Control Resonant will debut on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and strangely enough, Mac. The project is being co-financed and co-produced by Annapurna Pictures in partnership with Remedy, and you might know them from publishing hits such as What Remains of Edith Finch, Outer Worlds, Neon White, and Stray. Seeing a co-publishing form a company that never misses is a good sign for the quality of the story being told here. Dylan Feden as the new protagonist. In Resonant you play as Dylan, the brother of Jessie from the original, also called Prime Candidate 6. He was taken as a child by the Federal Bureau of Control at age 10 and eventually left in a hiss-inflicted coma during the events of the first game. Now, 7 years later, Dylan has awakened. No longer just a prisoner or a passive victim, he is being deployed by the Bureau into the heart of a reality-bending crisis, tasked with confronting this new hiss-like threat, while also searching for his sister, who is somewhere in the zone. Setting: warped Manhattan, outside the oldest house. In a reversal of the brutalist confined nature of the oldest house, Control Resonant explores the supernatural streets of a twisted version of Manhattan. The game world is divided into large, expansive zones such as the West Incursion Zone, where reality is actively breaking apart. It's clearly based off the famous city warping scenes from Inception, where reality is folded in on itself, and areas known as gravity anomalies, where physics gets warped, shifting gravity and orientation completely, like Gravity Rush but with less flying. Unlike the static corridors of the first game, this Manhattan is described as an alive, strange, and replayable environment filled with hidden encounters and optional discoveries that reward you for exploring the city. Genre shift: action-adventure RPG. The original Control was a third-person shooter, but Resonant completely changes into an action-adventure RPG, more akin to Nier Automata or Devil May Cry. While retaining Remedy's trademark cinematic spectacle and psychological storytelling, the game introduces a new emphasis on player choice and build crafting. Players can shape Dylan's growth utilising a deep progression system and different weapon types that allow players to play their own style, whether they want the large sweeping style, a power attack style, high speed, or even more of a magic caster style. This is the first time we're seeing Remedy switch genres, as all their previous games have been third-person shooters, not counting Death Rally. The Aberant, shape-shifting melee weapon. While Jessie wielded a shape-shifting pistol, the service weapon, Dylan's weapon for this game is a shape-shifting melee weapon. He commands the Aberant, a volatile and crude shape-shifting melee construct that mirrors his own unstable nature. This living weapon serves as a centerpiece of build crafting, aggressive combat, and the reality warping nature of this new game, as it is capable of instantly reconfiguring its geometry mid-battle to adapt to any threat. Players can fluidly shift between multiple tactical forms. The hammer has slow, powerful impacts ideal for heavy units. The blades have rapid, high-frequency slashes for dealing with fleshier enemies. The scythe provides wide, sweeping attacks for crowd control. And the fists allow for one-on-one, brawler-style pummeling to stagger foes. Players must weave these physical transformations seamlessly with Dylan's supernatural abilities, creating a complex but chaotic combat system where you must figure out what weapons and abilities are most suitable for the current situation while still maintaining combos and trying not to get hit. Supernatural powers and abilities. Dylan complements the physical close quarters of the Aberant with a suite of supernatural abilities designed around the warped reality nature of the game. 2 core traversal powers have been detailed. Reach, which allows him to span impossible gaps across the fractured cityscape, and Shift, a momentum redirection skill that enables mid-air dashes to navigate complex environments. Progression is tied to hunting down resonance, bosses formed from the corrupted remnants of once extraordinary individuals. Defeating these enemies acts as the primary upgrade gate for character growth, permanently unlocking new combat augmentations and traversal upgrades. We don't know much about other, more combat-focused abilities, but with the focus on Reach and Shift, it looks like traversal is a huge part of the game, and there probably is ability gating, like a Metroidvania. The world and exploration. Remedy has structured Control Resonant around large, distinct and expansive zones. Rather than a linear structure, within these warped city sectors, players will encounter a dense layer of branching missions, encounters and events that can be tackled in any order. The developers emphasise that this world is designed to be alive, strange and replayable, specifically built to reward curiosity with optional discoveries and hidden content scattered throughout the shifting landscape. Navigation in Control Resonant is heavily influenced by gravity anomalies, distinct zones where gravity and orientation shift entirely. This isn't a flat horizontal plane of a world like we're used to in most open world games. Here, walls can become floors, and areas might be stacked on top of or sideways to each other. This, I would imagine, would make navigation a puzzle itself, and I don't know how common gameplay features like a map would be implemented in such a mind-bending location. This sort of thing could either be a pain or a pleasure to go through, especially if there is backtracking involved. But Remedy has proven my trust, and I trust that they'll figure this problem out. Resonance, the new enemy loop, and the cosmic threat. Central to Dylan's progression is the hunt for resonance, powerful corrupted entities formed from individuals consumed by paranatural forces. The core gameplay loop revolves around tracking down and neutralising these boss-level threats, as defeating a resonant is the primary method for expanding Dylan's supernatural abilities, permanently unlocking new abilities that allow him to survive deadlier encounters and access deeper, previously unreachable layers of the city. This specific threat is part of a larger, reality-bending cosmic crisis that has breached the containment of the oldest house. The hiss has spilled out onto the streets of Manhattan, transforming the metropolis into a surrealist nightmare hellscape where the skyline is literally twisted and folded by supernatural forces. This isn't a mere containment breach, as we saw with the original Control, but more like a full-scale battle against a malevolent entity that is actively reshaping the world into a twisted, eldritch hellscape. Relationship to the original Control. Story-wise, Control Resonant is a direct canonical sequel set 7 years after the events of the first game, following the timeline of Jesse Feden's tenure as director. However, Remedy has designed the narrative to function as both a sequel and a new entry point, calling it a sibling of the first game. Creative director Mikhail Kasurinin emphasises that players don't have to know the first game to engage with the story of Resonant, because the story is constructed in a way that the dense lore of the Federal Bureau of Control, which was central to the first game, acts as a background foundation layer rather than a prerequisite barrier, allowing newcomers to jump straight into Dylan's journey without feeling lost. Visuals, tone, and atmosphere. Control Resonant retains the surrealist SCP-esque aesthetic that defined the original game, but pushes that aesthetic out of the brutalist architecture of the oldest house and into a sprawling, reality-warping Manhattan. It's a warped and ruined cityscape that we see a lot in these types of games, for example Nier Automata, Stellar Blade and Devil May Cry 5. The world design is also very clearly inspired by the likes of Inception, and the mirror dimension from Doctor Strange, and the gravity mechanics almost must have been inspired by the cult classic Gravity Rush. I really enjoyed the SCP aesthetic of the original game, and that does appear to be absent in this one, trading in the twisted mundanity of it for a bombastic, open environment that has twisted in upon itself and grown teeth. Standalone story with legacy ties. While definitely part of the shared universe of both Control and the Remedyverse, Resonant focuses entirely on Dylan Feden's perspective, functioning as a standalone narrative distinct from his sister's tenure as director. However, the legacy ties remain the core of the story, as Dylan's primary motivation is searching for Jesse Feden whilst working as an agent of the Federal Bureau of Control. The title itself, Resonant, reflects this multifaceted duality, being a sister game to the original, with opposing but similar gameplay, and so on, as it appears to be the central theme of the experience. We cannot wait for Resonant to release, although I was initially confused when they showed off melee combat in a Control game, but now with all this information I am nothing but hopeful and excited. I was a big fan of the original Control, and Resonant is a wild departure from it, but just like with how Remedy handled Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2, I am hopeful that this is going to end up being an absolute banger of a game.